Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to a brand new episode of What If Deku Was an Artificial Human. All for one preparing Noumu decides to deviate from his normal methods to try and make a new type of Noumu. Sentient Noumus, Noumus that could think for themselves. However, a young Shigaraki expresses want for a sibling. So he decided to kill two birds with one stone. However, to do this, he required one to be younger than Tomura and to have no quirk. If you guys enjoyed this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. After watching this video, don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Hee hee ha ha ha. We got it! Tomura laughed as he held up the copies of the hero class courses. Jiren had also delivered those orders you placed to Zuku, Kurogiri said as he poured the two drinks. He also found an electric-type quirk user to block UA's signals. Good, very good. The 18-year-old turned to the 15-year-old. Izu, you did a good job. Tomura then placed the files on the bar. Wednesday, that's when All Might is teaching at the Unforeseen Simulation joint along with Eraserhead and 13. 13 has little combat experience, so Kurogiri should go up against him. His quirk would be dangerous if caught, but with his quirk he should one-up the hero, Izuku said as Kurogiri nodded. Now Eraserhead. His quirk can mess me up quite easily, at least, the emitter and transformation quirks. Izuku tapped his chin before speaking again. But with his hair, I believe that it would get in the way of his vision. I mean, without his eyes he's rather quirkless. So send any mutants at him. Now All Might, we shall go at him. Tomura said more to Izuku than anyone else. Izuku nodded as Tomura laid out the student information. Now what shall we do with these 19 students? He asked, tapping the desk. Which zones shall we send them to? Izuku grabbed the shuffled files as he looked over them and planned for each one. Tsuyu Ajiri, send her to the conflagration zone. Her quirk frog form is best in the flood zone, he said as he moved on. Tenya Ida, his quirk engine grants him speed, so sending him somewhere he can't move would be best. Probably the flood zone, seeing as I don't know if his quirk can work in water. Yuga Oyama, his quirk naval laser literally shoots a laser from his navel. So it would be best to send him to an area where it would be dangerous to use his quirk, such as the ruins zone. Ochako Uraraka, quirk zero gravity. Whatever she touches can make it weightless and float into space if she wants to unless she releases it. She however has a limited weight. Send her to the mountain zone, less objects to float. Mashireo Ojiro, quirk tail. Any zone you want to send him to. Denki Kaminari, quirk electrification. His quirk would be too dangerous in the downpour zone and flood zone. Send him to something like the conflagration zone. Aijiro Kurishima, quirk hardening. A tough decision, seeing his quirk allows him to harden his body to protect himself and deals some heavy punches. Send him to landslide zone. Kujikuda, quirk animal voice. Any zone, seeing as his quirk allows him to communicate with animals, so landslide zone or mountain zone. Rikido Satu, quirk sugar rush. He gets stronger the more sugar he eats. Mountain zone. Meza Shuji, quirk duple arms. He can replicate parts of his body on his tentacles such as ears, mouth and eyes. The duplicate organs are more enhanced and can make more replicas and maybe glide anywhere you want, like the ruins zone. Hanta Siro, quirk tape. It allows him to shoot tape from his elbows, so send him to the conflagration zone to burn the tape or the downpour zone. Turu Hagakure, quirk transparency. Any zone, presumably flood zone or somewhere like the conflagration zone, anywhere really, seeing as she is invisible. Minoru Mineta, quirk pop off. He can throw those grapes off his head and they can stick to anything and anyone. Send him to any zone but the flood zone. Kyuka Jairu, quirk earphone jack. She can plug her jack-shaped earlobes into all sorts of objects and channel the sound of her heartbeats into them, and allows her to catch faint sounds as well. Send her wherever you can. Katsuki Bakugu, quirk explosion. He can create explosions. Flood zone, drown him, he said without even wasting any breath. Momo Yayorozu, quirk creation. Any zone, seeing as she can create whatever she needs. Fumikage Tokoemi, quirk dark shadow. The quirk is a shadow-like monster that materializes from his body, which he can contract. It's weak against light but grows much stronger in the darkness. Conflagration zone has a lot of light. Send it there. Shudo Todoroki, quirk half cold half hot. Basically, he can use fire and ice, not the flood zone, downpour zone, or conflagration zone. Send him to the ruins zone. However, when he came across the last one, his voice got caught in his throat. He looked down at the piece of paper. Mina Ashido, quirk acid. He spoke slowly. So you're a hero then? Are you okay? Asked the polite bartender. I'm fine, just someone I met previously, but as it turns out they're aspiring to be a hero. Tomura and Kurogiri looked at each other and back at Izuku. Is this the person you met at DS1? Yes. The green-haired teen said as he ran his hand through his hair that had grew quite a bit. However, he continued. Her quirk allows her to create corrosive liquid from her skin, and it can control its level of solubility and viscosity. Send her to the downpour zone or the flood zone. He turned to the villain made of mist. Send as many as you can. We might not be able to get rid of all of them. Kurogiri nodded as he passed Izuku a drink. Thank you, Kurogiri. It might be a bit suspicious if you were to leave immediately after All Might's death, Tomura said. Plus, any inventions you make would also help us. So what you're saying is stay undercover before the attack and after the attack. I know, he responded as he drank his drink. Tomura grinned as he twirled his own drink in his glass. Soon the symbol of peace will die at our hands. Izuru sighed as he spouted blood at the same time. He was looking forward to Wednesday way too much, but then again, fighting the #1 hero and winning. Just imagine, that would speak a lot for them. The ones that killed the #1 invincible hero All Might. The symbol of peace dying at the hands at the anti-symbol of peace. The symbol of war. Izuku was currently working on his invention they've been working on since the development classes. Hatsume had already made more than the support department year already. He was just working on his latest invention as the door opened. Afternoon, Yamakumo. The person greeted before spitting blood. Yagi-san. He blinked. What are you doing here? I came to say hi, my boy. Don't you have a class to teach or something? I do in the afternoon. He told him before looking at the gadget in his hands. What is that you got there? Just a small robot I'm working on. Oh? What does it do? Or rather, what will it do? I plan on it to record fighting styles of heroes and villains and project them as light copies. Toshinori's eyes widened. That's incredible, he said with a spout of blood following afterwards. Training the next generations of heroes will skyrocket thanks to learning the fighting styles of previous villains. Well, currently they would only soft holograms until I figure out how to make them hard holograms, he truthfully told the skeleton. But I might make that a feature to switch between them. But didn't you say it needed to be recorded? Yes, aside from the hard light copies, getting information is going to be hard. But there is countless information out there somewhere. True. I suppose you'll ask for heroes first? Maybe. He drawled as he inspected the droid. Well, as its creator, I kinda want to test it on myself. I see. The ability to fight yourself is a good way to find your flaws and improve. Hey, Yagi-sensei. Guess I can call you that now. Yes, but what is it? Could you kept this a secret until it's done? Certainly. I would love to see the other teachers' faces too. He laughed, and as soon as he patted Yamakumo's back, the student spat out blood. I'm sorry, my Bodash. He spat blood too. No, it's fine. Anyways, I heard you got Midnight as your teacher. Is there any problems? If by problem you mean that we're messing with her. She did talk about that, he mumbled. But nothing else? You don't feel uncomfortable? No, he responded. She did try and use her sex appeal for some reason. I think she's thinking that she's losing her touch due to how we reacted. Toshinori stared at Yamakumo for a while. You're all having too much fun messing with her, aren't you? Yep, he said truthfully. Seems she has her hands full despite how small your class is. He felt somewhat bad for Midnight seeing how her class had suddenly decided to mess with her for some reason. But hey, it was better than having a perverted yellow octopus ogle her while showing her up by being a better teacher. And that concludes our lessons for the day, class, Midnight said as she took over the class' last lesson of the day. Also, Yamakumo, clean your blood up. Oka-dash. He spat blood again. Dude, are you sure you're fine? Asked a concerned Joker. Crystal. Izuku had walked back into the bar after a long day of school. You're home, I see. Kurogiri nodded in his direction. Do you ever leave that bar? I do. While I'm here? He asked with a little bit of skepticism. I do. Does he really? He thought as he looked at the state of the clean bar. I do. Okay, lesson learned. Izuku decided he wouldn't ask again. If he could read his mind, he was fucked. Anything interesting happen? He asked the teen. Not much. Messed with Midnight some more, stayed in my group's circle. Ah, the non-hero group. The Shadow Man nodded, remembering how Izuku had told him of the inventor, Brainwasher, and the clown. Yep, also I'm working on a project too. What's that? Izuku had placed the device he was working on at UA High and told Kurogiri of its functions. That would be very helpful, especially seeing that you can easily get the heroes' information. That's the plan. But what of the heroes? Wouldn't they want to use it? They would, but I can just request their information without a reason. Plus, if I happen to get caught while secretly getting that information too, I know. Sometimes it's best to be straightforward with half-truths to reach your goal, even if you have to help or cooperate with your enemy. I know. Is everyone ready? Yes, Kurogiri said. At the same time the rescue lessons begin, we shall attack. Good, that's what Tomura also said too. Kurogiri informed the green-haired and eyed teen. But I have to ask, you asked for some specifics other than our jammer. Why is that? Oh? That? He asked as he rubbed the back of his head. That might prove useful in the field, but even if they succeed or not, it's more for their quirks. I see. I do hope All Might does show up, he muttered, getting a look from the villain. Seeing the look, Izuku decided to explain. While All Might is getting weaker, he could possibly have to skip for a bit, kind of like stopping for a break after you ran for a bit, for example. Besides, that's what the backup plan is for. The backup plan was easy. Kill everyone while All Might wasn't there. That would cause the hero to show up eventually. Or maybe never. You should get some rest, Izuku, Kurogiri told the teen. I'll fix you something up later, but you need energy for tomorrow's plan. Yes, tomorrow was the day All Might will fight for his life against the League of Villains. Izuku walked upstairs to his room and got some rest. His heart beat faster at the thought of fighting the #1 hero. He was going to kill him if it was the last thing he did. Tomura chuckled as he scratched his neck. It was time. He wore black pants, a featureless black V-neck shirt that exposed his collarbones, and red high-top sneakers with no socks. On top of that, he had 14 disembodied hands clasped onto his arms, chest, neck, head, and face. This was Tomura's villain outfit. On his side was Kurogiri, whose form was not contained within his usually elegant suit but rather looked like he was just floating mist with only the 3 metal plates being seen. Izuku, however, wasn't wearing his usual villain outfit but rather wore dark green cargo pants. That was it. He did contemplate wearing visor-like goggles though. He didn't really know if he needed them, but he took them anyway, just in case. When he wore them, he looked like he was right out of a sci-fi. The reason he only wore the cargo pants? Quirks. What else were you expecting? You guys ready? Tomura asked as they both nodded. Then, let's kill the symbol of peace. And with that, they went through Kurogiri's warp gate. It was just another day for the students of Class 1A, another day of heroics. They had just gotten to the USJ as All Might had yet to arrive, as he would later on. The Space Hero 13 had just told everyone about the USJ as Eraserhead, or to the students Aizawa sat back and watched. And that's when Aizawa turned and saw the opening of a portal at the central plaza of the USJ. Out of the portal first was Tomura. Huddle together and don't move, Aizawa shouted at his students, much to their confusion. 13. Protect the students. After Tomura walked out, so did Izuku and the rest of the villains that came with them. And that wasn't including the villains that were dropped off in the different zones as well. What is that? The red-headed Kirishima asked. Is this like that training pattern at the entrance exam? Don't move! Those are villains! Eraserhead shouted as he put his goggles on. Eraserhead and 13 as expected, Kurogiri muttered. According to the teacher's curriculum we obtained, it seems we are right on the money. However, All Might isn't here, so it seems Plan B it is. The curriculum? The hero thought. How did they get their hands on it? We went through all this trouble and All Might isn't even here, the gray-haired teen grumbled. Ah well, Plan A is a no-go. Hey Izu, wonder if he'll come if we kill the kids? He asked his younger brother as the green-haired teen nodded just as the hero jumped down towards them. I believe so, Nasan, he said as he looked up towards the stairs with his sci-fi goggles. As the hero came down, Izuku fired a concentrated laser beam from his eyes at the airborne hero. The hero quickly used his scarf weapon to pull himself out of the way without being hit by the laser. However, he wasn't unscathed as he felt the sting of the laser. Scatter them, Kurogiri, Tomura commanded as the mist villain disappeared, leaving the brother duo and the approaching hero. As the erasure hero came down, he noticed something as he activated his quirk. The villains he was fighting were all mutants. His quirk couldn't affect them. They prepared this much in advance for this attack? he thought as he dodged the four-armed mutant's attack. Despite his quirk only working on transformation and emitter quirks, he did devise a countermeasure if he did fight mutant-type villains. Aizawa was surrounded by nothing but mutant types, and knowing that he couldn't use his quirk on any of them, it was either easier or harder for him. It all depends on what could happen next. God, pro heroes are such a pain. Tomura scratched his neck as he turned to Izuku. You sure you don't want to have a go now and get it over with? Soon. The teen with the mane of green hair said. I'll hop in when they least expect it. As the students and 13 went to evacuate, they were cut off by Kurogiri. I'm sorry, I'm afraid I can't allow that, he said to the group. Greetings. We are the Villain Alliance, or rather League of Villains. I apologize for the presumption, but we took it upon ourselves to enter UA High, the base of you heroes. I do have to ask, will the hero known as All Might be attending later? We didn't want to miss the opportunity to extinguish him, you see, Kurogiri told them. But that hardly matters now. As 13 went to use his quirk, Kirishima and the ash-blonde Bakugo attacked the Miss Villain. As expected from the short-tempered and the boisterous one, he said as both Bakugo and Kirishima fell through his warp gate, appearing somewhere else in the USJ. What have you done to them? 13 demanded. Simple, I took them as hostages. If I die from your quirk, then they die. They didn't know that his quirk could only warp, but they didn't need to know that. Kurogiri then sent his warp gate around all the students and 13. Don't worry. It'll all be over soon. However, the students that were warped appeared in the designated area where their quirks weren't useful at. It didn't take long for some students to realize. They know our quirks. How dare you? 13 cursed at the villain. It seems I missed some, he mused. 13 then activated his quirk of black hole as he tried to suck up the misty villain. You were the warper. You can't hold hostages. Only send them away. Found out already, Kurogiri said, and if he could grin, he would right now. But you know, the students that were warped. I wonder what would happen if they find themselves in an area where their quirks are useless. Like a frog in fire or stomach laser that's dangerous in crumbling buildings? The students there as well as their teacher went into shock. Why you know our quirks? They asked as the villain laughed. Of course I do. That's why Eraserhead can't use his quirk on the group that's fighting him now. Kurogiri then focused his attention on 13. But 13, when it comes to combat, then a warp gate appeared behind the hero as his own quirk started to disintegrate his back before he stopped using the quirk. 13! The students shouted. Now, it won't be too long, Kurogiri said as his warp gate expanded. The fastest of the students there began to run towards the exit. I told you I can't allow that, he told the student. He glanced at the students he missed. A few of them fell under the doesn't matter where they're sent category. Then there was that pink-skinned one kneeling down next to 13. But she was looking elsewhere. This is what it means to be a hero, Kurogiri said. Giving up your life in order to protect others. If you can't throw away your life like this, then give up on being heroes. Ashido, are you okay? The invisible girl Hagakure asked. It looks like you've seen a ghost. It can't be, she muttered as she looked down the stairs and saw the green hair. Only one person she knew had that hairstyle. I assure you it is, Kurogiri told her. You're lying, she said in a hoarse whisper. Maybe I am, he replied as he just sent the kids back to where the hero was laying at. Right now, he wouldn't let any of these kids go, not until the signal. Kurogiri, I will fire a laser beam from my eyes directly at the entrance, and when that happens, we let a single student run. That way, we've done enough damage to the students and the teachers before All Might turns up. Izuku's voice repeated in his head. And if All Might arrives with the other heroes, then we can leave knowing we did damage to them. Eraserhead threw his scarf, which was easily caught by Tomura, who was thought to also be a mutant quirk user like the other villains. You're the favorite? He asked as he took out another villain and shot his elbow into Tomura's stomach, only to be caught by a hand that started to disintegrate his elbow. So there was an emitter mixed in, he thought as the pain increased. Your hair is getting in the way of your fighting style, you know, and the longer you fight, the more your dry eye acts up. They know about my dry eye. Don't bite off more than you can chew, hero. Tomura scolded with much venom on the word hero. Aizawa landed a sucker punch as he jumped back with his now broken elbow. He was forced to dodge two villains who knocked each other out. Oh, by the way, Eraserhead, Tomura called out. I'm not the favorite in this fight. As Tomura said this, Eraserhead turned to see Izuku, and he had changed. Instead of being the same of when he came out of the portal, he was now bulker. Bigger and buffer, probably from a quirk, But he fired a laser before, so how could he? Unless he had some type of copy quirk and he wasn't blonde, so that ruled out 1B's Monoma. If he had to compare anyone to his sudden change of his upper body, he would have to say that it reminded him of All Might. Only the upper body of the teen, which he just realized, was around his student's age if not the same. He used his quirk erasure on the green-haired teen as the torso and the arms went back to normal. But this caused his punch to go overhead of the teen. The teen landed a punch in the man's stomach as Aizawa's eyes widened. This wasn't just normal strength. This wasn't strength from a quirk. This was his actual strength, and if he had 2 quirks, possibly more, he didn't want to see what his strength could become. Aizawa spat out blood as the fist drove deeper in before retreating. Eraserhead only had a few seconds to react to the kick, which luckily went overhead. He landed a punch on the teen villain's chest, but it seemed he was unaffected. "Oh yes, forgot to mention," the gray-haired leader said. "He has shock absorption, a mutant-type quirk." Aizawa's eyes widened as he got a knee directly to his chin. Izuku had flipped over the teacher before kicking him into the ground and landing on top of him. He grabbed the hero's head as he raised it into the air as he pulled the good arm backwards. "Watch, Eraserhead," the green-eyed villain spoke. "Watch as it all crumbles around you." Aizawa's head made a nice dent in the pavement before rising back up again. "You might live, if All Might shows up." His face re-entered the crater as he felt the pain in his movable arm. It felt like it was going to snap. "I wonder, what would happen if I pull your eyes out?" Aizawa's head slammed into the ground 3 times this time. I guess it's about that time," he said. "Your students are scattered, fighting villains, whom they might be able to counter against, their teachers defeated and no hope in sight. Guess it's time to call for All Might." Izuku then fired a laser beam at the entrance. "What are you talking about?" Aizawa said from the rubble. "The damage has been done. It's time to let one of your flock go and get the symbol of peace." "You don't mean?" "That's right. This is all to kill All Might. The villains we brought with us are just to keep your kids distracted or kill them if they can, but I highly doubt they can even harm them. Or if they can, not too much." Aizawa couldn't believe it. They planned this from the start. They knew their quirks and had strategies to defeat both him and 13. They knew the students' quirks and where to send them where their quirks were least effective. Now they were going to let one student go and fetch All Might after enough time had passed to do damage to them all. To taunt him that he failed as both a hero and a teacher? Truly, the League of Villains had proven their group to be both smart and powerful. Not just a common group of low-life villains, they were not to be messed with. He knew that the 3 that came in were part of the main league, but they were also willingly to use low-life villains as disposables. The 3 from the League of Villains were not to be messed with. He hated to see the other members of the league. As he started to black out, he could only hope his students were okay. If what the multi-quirk villains said, then the other villains were just distractions. But that wouldn't stop if the disintegrating hand guy went to kill the students though. He could only hope that the other pro heroes arrived. Kurogiri was handling the wannabe heroes just fine, until the laser beam hit the entrance. It was time. The kid with engine legs ran as the warp gate disappeared from the entrance, as he himself was shocked but continued running, until he left the USJ. "My role is done," he said to the remainder group. What?" the downed hero and students asked with shock. It seemed 13 had regained consciousness. "My role was to keep you all here busy," the villain admitted. "Honestly, there is only 3 of us from the league here, 2 of which had already defeated Eraserhead with ease, along with myself handling you all just fine." His mist came back towards him, prepared to warp to Tomura's side. "Then, this was your plan?" "Yes. I believe the others have told Eraserhead, so I'll tell you," Kurogiri said to the students. "This whole plan was to draw All Might. Eraserhead fighting mutant quirk holders, 13 fighting someone who can counter his quirk, and of course, my 2 associates who hide themselves in with the mutants." Kurogiri turned to 13, who seemed to be losing consciousness again. "The other villains we brought? They were just there to be distractions for your students and maybe actually cause some harm to them. Now I must say farewell. I did just let the fastest one of you go on purpose after all." With that, Kurogiri disappeared, leaving scared students and the injured 13. They just let Ida out on purpose. Were they all just falling into their plan like chess pieces? 'Cause it felt like it. Plus, with the way the Miss Villain spoke, it sounded just like they were. Kurogiri appeared next to Tomura, who was watching his younger brother slam Eraserhead's head into the concrete below. "Shigaraki," Kurogiri said to both of the teens. "Kurogiri, then I assume you sent the runner?" Tomura asked. "I did. Good. Very good. The older teen chuckled. Hear that? The plan has gone according to plan. Damage has been done. All Might failed. The students may have defeated some of the villains in the different zones, but as long the two heroes failed, then that's that. All we have to do is wait for the symbol of peace to arrive. He turned to his younger brother. So Izu, would you like the honors and take the symbol of peace's pride down a notch? I would love to. There are a lot of students around. Izuku then faced in the direction of the ship in the flood zone as he prepared to fire a larger laser than before at the students on the ship. As he was about to fire, he stopped and looked at the entrance as the doors exploded off the hinges. Have no fear, a loud and booming voice said. For I have arrived, the number one hero declared. All Might. Tomura looked visibly pleased. The symbol of peace. Izuku looked up at the hero who slowly walked to the stairs. I had a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach, so I cut the principal's long story short and decided to come check up on all of you, especially when I couldn't contact 13, he said with a look of anger. I happened to come across young Ida on the way over here, and thanks to him he told me of what happened here, and now you really made me angry. Seeing just how frightened you made all the students are, seeing how desperately my pupils were giving it their all, it not only filling my chest with pride at them for doing their best, but also complete anger for what you did to them, he shouted as he ripped his tie off. We were waiting for you, hero trash, Tomura gleefully said. If you didn't show up, then we might have had to start killing the students. Tomura didn't care if All Might heard him or not, which he did. He was a dead man walking anyway. The muscular hero disappeared with incredible speed, knocking out any of the still conscious mooks before swiping Aizawa from Izuku, who had let go in order to avoid the hero's chop. You're still quite fast. I would almost believe our intel was off, the gray-haired teen muttered, fixing the hand on his face. You are really getting weaker, but the question is, can you really protect Eraserhead? He asked as the hero sent a look to the hero and back to the villains. The number one hero had spied the teen next to Shigaraki and noticed that he was the same age of his students. How could someone so young join people like these? The hero dashed forward, folding his arms in a cross as he approached Tomura. Carolina smash! He shouted as he swung his arms in the same cross formation as Izuku bulked up and took the attack and went for a swipe, to which the hero ducked under. As much as he didn't want to hit someone so young, they did harm Aizawa. And from Aizawa's unconscious mumbling, it sounded like these three were the ones responsible. All Might punched the teen, who just smiled at him. I can't believe it. My blows aren't working at all. Izuku tanked the punches like a champ as he threw his own punches at the hero. This is his quirk, shock absorption. Tomura smirked. Shock absorption? I thought that bulking was his quirk. But thanks for telling me. All Might turned around to the back of Izuku and grabbed hold of him as the green-haired teen smirked as he was already in the air, about to be put into the ground. Thanks for taking the bait, Izuku said as he was slammed into the ground, causing a large pillar of dust and smoke to erupt from the ground below. The students at the top of the stairs cheered for All Might's successful blow until the smoke cleared. While All Might succeeded in the German suplex, Izuku had fell into a warp gate and appeared under the hero. The number one hero coughed up blood as hands had dug into his sides. And on that hand that dug into his weak spot, spikes grew from the fingers of the villain and penetrated his weak spot. Not along that, but a few strands of green hair on the villain had manipulated to become spike-like and stabbed into the hero's back. Anywhere but there, the hero thought, and as if he was reading the hero's mind, his fingers dug deeper into the weak spot. And then, Izuku started to lower himself into the portal. It's my duty to eviscerate you, Kurogiri said. You have fallen right into the position we wanted you in. This is great. Tomura's eyes were full of glee. To think, killing the symbol of peace would be this easy. And as if jinxing himself, Izuku found his right arm frozen. Tomura dodged a swipe from another hero kid as he could hear weak explosions coming from the water. I heard about you bastards' plan, Todoroki said as he walked onto the scene. About your plan to kill All Might. The symbol of peace won't go down as easy as you bunch of clowns. It seems some nuisances showed up, Izuku muttered as the hair spikes pulled out of the hero and went back to normal. Izuku turned his head to see the grenade-gloved explosion approach Kurogiri. You fucking shadow-ass son of a bitch, he shouted before Izuku fired his lasers at the short-tempered teen. Your explosions are weaker since you've spawned under the water, Izuku thought as the lasers hit the teen, causing a look of surprise on the team. Kurogiri gave a thankful look to Izuku as he moved to Tomura's side once more, just as the hero used this moment to get out of the villain's grip, and the spikes sliding out of his side. Damn! Izuku slowly slipped down through the warp gate, much to the surprise of the ice user, as his right arm broke off and shattered into many pieces of ice. I really like that arm. It's going to be weird now, but I'll get used to it pretty quickly. The hero and his students watched as Izuku regenerated his right arm to be good as new. Not only shock absorption but super regeneration as well. Just how many quirks does he have? All Might had a bead of sweat go down his face. He only knew one man who had multiple quirks like that. Better keep your eye on the prize, All Might, the green-haired villain said as a knife stabbed into All Might's back. It was one of the knives dropped by the villains in the central plaza, and more were on their way. Bakuga held up palms as he fired explosion after explosion at the knives as Todoroki focused on creating a wall of ice to stop the knives. Take Aizawa and get out of here, All Might commanded the students. But dash, no buts. Just get out of here. The students understood. They would just get in All Might's way. They would be holding him back from using 100% of his powers. So they followed his orders without a word, except for the single curse from Bakugo. That's when Izuku launched forward. The number one hero went for a punch, but due to Izuku using his quirk to lost the sudden bulk reverting to his normal muscled physique, he had ducked under the fist as a sword blade came out of his wrist and slashed the hero's side as he ran to the students. He's fast! That was what the students carrying Aizawa saw come towards them, before acid made the ground slippery to stand on for the artificial human. Quick, you guys! The acid user Ishido shouted as Izuku jumped off the slippery acid just as All Might headed towards Tomura and Kurogiri. He gritted his teeth while looking towards the hero kids before running off towards All Might. Oh no, you don't, hero! Izuku shouted as wind spiraled around his arm. All Might turned to face the wind spiraling around his arm before he threw his arm like he was going to punch the hero as the spiraling wind shot out like a tornado. Bring his arms up to block the wind that slowly pushed him back. The green-haired villain opened his mouth as his teeth changed from their standard form to large, sharp teeth like a canine's. Izuku bit down on the hero's leg with enough force to draw blood before releasing to avoid the ground-splitting punch. The hero wiped his mouth free of blood. You good? It's a shame that you are working with this villains, All Might said. How many quirks has he shown? How many quirks does he still have up his sleeve? The hero's eyes narrowed. This is definitely the work of All for One. It has to be. Did he give him his quirk before he died? Did he just load him up with various quirks? Is he All for One in a new body, or is it another quirk? You know, hero, Tomura said. You should stop thinking about connections while you're in a fight. Izuku, after charging, fired a larger laser than before. It was huge. All Might crossed his arms as he prepared for the beam. He would have dodged, but where the green-haired villain had bit him, the laser connected. A direct hit. When I heard he was weaker now, I didn't think he was this weak, Izuku said. Let's clear this level and go home, Tomura said as Izuku bulked up again, and this time, he closed his fists but generated a number of spikes from his fists. But these spikes were different from the ones that appeared out of his fingers earlier. I don't have much time left. I need to finish this now. All Might ran forward, as did Izuku. I am the symbol of peace, and I will not fall. Their fists collided despite the fact Izuku had spikes on his hands. One of his quirks is shock absorption. Your punches do nothing. I am well aware, the hero shouted as the two started throwing punches like they had stands. You could almost hear the aura and muta in between the barrage of punches they sent each other. I can't get near, Kurogiri shouted as Tomura looked at Izuku. Izuku, you said shock absorption and not nullification. That means there is a limit to how much of my strength he can take, All Might shouted. Well then, I just have to go beyond the limit he can handle. Tomura's eyes widened as if the whole world had slowed down. Shit, his punches are more powerful now, most likely a last resort tactic, Izuku thought. But at the same time, his fists are only hitting in the same location, over and over and over again. Heh. I do have a limit, he is right. But limits can be surpassed to increase how much you can take or do. Izuku started to push his own physical limits, as well throwing a barrage of punches at the hero in front of him. And like the hero, he threw most of his punches at his weak point. He hit the hero in the same location over and over again. One of them had to fall eventually. It doesn't matter if I fall. Tomura and Kurogiri can easily finish the job if I am defeated, Izuku's eyes narrowed and his gritted his teeth. Even if I weaken you to that point so they can defeat you, it doesn't matter if I break my body as long as you die. I'll go past my limits. Die. Izuku shouted with an animalistic-like roar. I'm sorry, my boy, if you are connected with who I think you are, I'm sorry. The number one hero thought as he slammed his foot down. He is just using you. Manipulating you for his own deeds, to kill me. I can't believe he would use children like yourself and at such a young age. He probably manipulated you when you were an impressionable child. The ground underneath them cracked. I'm truly sorry for being fooled by him. But you're leaving me with no choice. Izuku's roars sounded more like that of a monster as his goggles had been knocked off during their death match. All Might started to walk forward as Izuku was getting knocked back. Izuku was sent back before running back at the hero, and that's when he found himself in the air with All Might in less than a second. All Might grabbed his arm before spinning Izuku into the sky and jumping after him. Izuku brought up his arms to guard as the hero sent him crashing to the ground. The young teen let out a spout of blood from crashing into the ground as the hero landed next to the teen that was still airborne. I apologize for hurting a youth such as yourself, but you left me no choice. He pulled his hand back as he prepared the final punch. Plus Ultra! He shouted as his fist connected with the multi-quirk villain. Izuku's eyes turned to a blank white just before he was shot into the sky and blasted out of the USJ at incredible speeds. It shook the whole USJ as he disappeared into the clouds. I really have gotten weaker. In my heyday, 5 punches would have been enough. Today I have thrown more than 300. He said rather to himself while feeling a bit of regret for hurting a youth so young. But then a sharp pain stabbed his heart, and he had no idea why. Now villain, we both want to put an end to this pretty quickly, don't we? Izu. Tomura had shouted as he watched his younger brother shot into the sky. How dare you? He said as he picked up Izuku's goggles and held them tight. How dare you do that to him, my little brother? He shouted with such venom that even All Might flinched. So, he manipulated brothers. All Might thought. Damn, I don't have much time left. You're weaker? Bullshit. You're still powerful. Tomura shouted before he stared All Might and if looks could kill. No, there's no way he would lie to me. Tomura muttered. After all, if you didn't get weaker, then Izu would have been. All Might internally flinched at the crazed look in Tomura's eye. I'll avenge Izu. Izu had weakened you for us. He'd have wanted us to attack you after you spent your energy fighting him. Kurogiri nodded as he prepared to attack the hero alongside Tomura. We'll avenge Izu. We won't let his efforts die in vain, Kurogiri said. He weakened you to a point we can defeat you. The two villains ran forward at the hero. I'm out of time. I'm done for. Just before the Tomura and Kurogiri approached the hero, a bullet hit Tomura's hand. So they've finally arrived. All Might turned to the stairs where the other heroes arrived. We're regrettably late, Nedza said. I came back with all the people I could scrape together. Nedza brought all the hero teachers he could gather. Kurogiri! Shouted Tomura as the mist man sprang to action as Kurogiri covered Tomura as the bullets went through the warp gate. However, some of the villains the students were fighting had disappeared by falling through a warp gate, much to the confusion of the students. Ha! We're getting pulled in. Kurogiri saw that it was due to 13's black hole quirk. Tomura looked directly at the hero and left a final warning. We'll get you next time, symbol of peace. However, just as they were about to disappear, something was coming in fast. All Might could hear it coming closer and closer. What is that noise? Asked one of the heroes. All Might's eyes widened as something came through the hole All Might created and smashed into the ground. The dust settled as a loud, deafening, inhuman roar could be heard throughout the USJ. Tomura stared at the figure. Izu! However, Izuku had a set of large demonic-looking wings that were red in color. Izuku dashed forward towards the symbol of peace before a wall of cement appeared in front of him. Izuku, retreat for now! Kurogiri shouted as Tomura had to agree with the mist man. He didn't want to lose Izuku if the other heroes were here. All Might had backup now. The hero with the gun shot at the flying villain, but it was blocked by a blue sphere barrier. Tomura and Kurogiri had disappeared as Izuku flew through a warp gate at the broken hole in the roof of the USJ. All Might was cut off as the cement wall surrounded him thanks to the hero's cementas. All Might let out a sigh as he was almost returning to his true form. As he returned back to his skeleton self, he released a sigh. If I hadn't gone that far, I'd probably be dead already. That's how formidable those three are. However, He couldn't help but think of what his longtime arch-nemesis of his and his predecessors done to manipulate a pair of brothers. In the bar, a portal opened as it spewed out Tomura, Izuku, and Kurogiri. "We were completely defeated, and we were so close," Tomura said as Izuku's wings retracted into his body. Sensei could be heard through the monitor. "But from the sounds of it, you did quite a number on them. Not only did you harm the symbol of peace, you also took him down a notch by taking down his colleagues and spreading fear into his students. But we failed to kill him," Izuku said as his shock absorption and super regeneration was fixing him up. "It doesn't matter. No use crying over spilt milk. The plan you three used was brilliant, and worked well despite not killing him," Sensei praised. "You took care of them brilliantly, handled the teachers and students and their quirks magnificently. Take pride in harming them, as this will only harm UA's reputation." Tomura struggled up and held his shot hand. "You're right, Sensei," he said. "Tomura, we need to fix that hand of yours," Sensei said. "And I have received those villains you warped, Kurogiri. As you said, Izuku, they do have useful quirks we can use again, but with a better host to use them. Now let's gather a group much like before, but this time with efficiency, choosing the strong rather than getting weak villains to use as distractions," Sensei told them. "Next time, we will show the world the true horror of our existence." The three villains from the League of Villains had escaped, much to the dismay of the pro-heroes, but they were able to gather the remaining villains and save the students trapped in the other zones. "Man, they broke in so flashily and we still let them get away," President Mike huffed. "That was a blow to any hero's pride." "Thanks, Cementos," the number one hero in his true form said as the fellow hero just smiled. "I'm a fan of yours too, All Might. Now let's keep your true form hidden and head towards the infirmary," he said. "But do try not to overdo it so much next time." As the police rounded up all the villains that remained in the USJ, Tsukachi checked up on the students and the villains that were captured. 17, 18, and 19, all students accounted for, he said. He felt bad for the kids, he honestly did. Villains attacked them when they had their class and they were prepared for both the teachers and the students. Scarily so, the three ringleaders who orchestrated the attack, if they decided to go through with killing instead of waiting for his best friend, All Might, then the kids wouldn't be able to last. The ones that were teleported suffered some injury of some kind. The only ones who weren't injured in the attack were the ones that didn't get warped, and that too was part of their grand scheme. How terrifying. If any of you have any information of any kind regarding the three villains who led this attack, please come forward, he said with a kind voice. If not, please follow your principal and teachers. While Eraserhead was down, they had to follow their other teachers. However, as they all left, Mina walked forward. "Do you have any information on the villains?" the detective asked. "Don't worry, you're not in any trouble or anything. I did meet him before I started here." She started and Tsukachi could see the betrayal in her eyes. She was in denial of what she saw. Then, she began to tell him what she knew, what she had heard from the green-haired teen at DS1. "I see." The man nodded. "Thank you for your cooperation. You didn't know that this would happen. It could have happened to any of us." Now it was time to see his old friend. He had already told the students what happened to the three teachers, and in the end, they would be fine. But his friend had information he needed for his investigation. He turned to his partner Sansa Tamakawa. "Sansa, take care of the rest here," he told him as he began to leave. Sansa was a lean, young man with the head of a cat with light-colored fur. He wore a light-colored buttoned shirt with a bell attached to the collar. He also wore a black protective vest over the shirt, and was relatively dressed like most police force members. "Affirmative," he saluted. "We have to focus on fortifying our security across the board," Nedzu brought up as Midnight spoke up. "As a quirk, warping is exceptionally rare. It's really too bad it fell into the hands of the villain's side." "Yes, it's a shame. Plus it's a shame that young and talented ones also fell into the hands of the villains. Excuse me, Principal, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to investigate every nook and cranny of this campus," Tsukachi asked as the principal nodded. "Oh yes, of course," the mouse nodded. "I realize the police are often buffeted by less than civil remarks these days, but we recognize their jurisdiction over these matters is higher than ours. When it comes to investigations, that is you gentlemen's field of expertise. Please by all means conduct yourselves as usual." "Thank you." All Might, or rather Tashinori Yagi, stared up at the ceiling. "This time, the circumstances being what they are, I won't say anything," an elderly woman said. This was Recovery Girl. I don't doubt that I was being reckless with my time limit, probably, if only I had just another hour or so in me. He sighed. But I can't believe that someone so young joined their side. Lay back down! She scolded the number one hero. Yagi lied back down as he decided to listen to the heroine. He's still out there, he suddenly said. Only one person can grant multiple quirks, and he's done it to a child. Suddenly the door opened to reveal the longtime best friend of All Might. Long time no see, Toshi, Tsukachi. Is that you? So you showed up too, huh? Sorry to be coming at you so suddenly, but I need your testimony about the villains especially. Wait, hold on, before that, are all the students okay? And Eyes Eraserhead in 13? He asked with full concern. Tsukachi sighed at his old friend's behavior. The students for the most part are fine. They suffered injuries from how well the villains attacked. Eraserhead and 13 are not in life-threatening conditions, but 13 suffered back injuries from his own quirk and Eraserhead suffered multiple injuries to his face as well as both arms. Were you able to get any information about the villains? I did manage to get something. Apparently one of your students met with the green-haired villain before the start of the new school year. They did? She's just as shocked as you are. Anyway, he was adopted at 4 years old after his parents died the same year presumably and gained a brother-uncle and a father. He told All Might. And that's it. Oh, and his name was Izuku Shigaraki. I see, the hero said as his thoughts were back on his old and lifetime enemy. He and his friend talked for a bit more before Recovery Girl deemed it was necessary for the hero to get some rest. Tomura got his hand fixed after the removal of the bullet as Izuku rested from the exhaustion All Might left him with. He also visited Sensei and got some upgrades. He had a whole day to rest tomorrow, seeing how the destruction they caused the school to be closed the next day. Izuku was currently sitting on the windowsill as he looked out to the bustling town. He had one thought on his mind, however. The sports festival was coming up. A smile crept up on his face as the prospect of the festival approaching. He would be able to hurt the students more, especially the ones who were a thorn in his side during the attack. Mainly the rank 2nd hero's pet project. He did lose his arm after all. I did a thorough search for the name Shigaraki and for his quirk that seems to entail disintegrating whatever he touches, Tsukachi said as he stood with the pro heroes in the conference room. I scoured the quirk registration records of every citizen, but I couldn't find anything like it. It's the same story for the man with the warp gate quirk, that Kurogiri character, and that Izuku Shigaraki character with the multiple quirks too, he continued. Either they were never hit by the census, or they're simply aliases, or their records have been taken out entirely somehow. In any case, they are, for all intents and purposes, shadow people. They never handed in their quirk registration forms, so long story short, we've got nothing to go on, the cowboy hero Snipe said. And once the ringleader Shigaraki, the older one, heals from those gunshot wound, he'll come to give us some more grief in the future. The ringleader, All Might, what is it? Nedza asked the hero beside him. It only just came to mind, but that was a fairly daring plan. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have gone through with it. He started. But they were prepared. They devised plans to take care of the students and their quirks as well as countering 13 and Eraserhead's quirks, and not to mention Shigaraki, the ringleader's younger brother. He held multiple quirks. Not even quirk marriages could produce something like that. Nevertheless, they have showed what quirks he has and even disclosed quirks them too, the principal said. But from the looks of it, we can't be sure, but I believe he has more quirks than what he showed just then. That's very concerning, the hero Blood King said. We rounded up around 70 villains at the USJ the other day, the detective brought up. They were all third-rate thugs, the types who would sulk in back alleys. However, they all swore allegiance to Shigaraki and followed him without question. But it was like the accounts from the students and Eraserhead said, they were only used as distractions and possible harm to the students. They were used to be thrown away, that was it, nothing else. He finished. He took a breath before continuing. In this age filled to the hilt of heroes, evildoers have felt pressure on them intensify with time, and they may have felt attracted to his more innocent and simple-minded brand of evil. But we can't exactly know what their intentions are after than killing you, All Might, he said looking at his lifetime friend. Heroes have also been invaluable with our being able to give conducting proper searches and investigations our undivided attention. I'll be going to assist the enlarging the police dragnet so we can continue capturing more criminals. Thank you, Tsukachi-san. The mouse thanked the detective. If you look at it another way, then they are both like their students. Even if they were strong at such an age younger than us, then that means they still have potential to grow much stronger than the display shown at the USJ. Perhaps if we can help them by bringing them into the light. But I guess that's a bit too naive of me. The class of 1H was silent, waiting for their teacher. The villain attack was unexpected and Hatsume seemed to be angry. Once I get my hands on those villains, I'll teach them what happens when I can't work on my babies. That's when Izuku decided to stop listening. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. The midnight or Kiyama-sensei had walked in. Morning, sensei. Morning, their homeroom teacher said. I apologize for being late. We all had a conference this morning. Are you okay, sensei? Izuru asked. Yeah, are you fine after the attack? You fought right? Joker asked. The concern of her students brought a smile to her face. I'm fine. And Yamakumo? Yes, sensei? I should be asking you that. He spouted blood onto his desk as he asked his teacher if she was fine. It should have been the other way around. Well, anyways, we're going to be doing something a little different. UA's sports festival is approaching, boys and girls, she declared. The sports festival, the class shouted. Do not worry about villains, I can see some worried looks. Police presence will be 5 times bigger than normal, she told the students. For those of you who may not know, our sports festival is one of Japan's biggest events. In days past, the Olympics was the sports festivity that whipped all the nation into a froth of enthusiasm. But now, as you know, the extent and population have shrunk and it's lost a lot of substance. So what has taken the place of the Olympics in Japan is the UA Sports Festival. The UA Sports Festival had taken over the Olympics. But then again, the #1 hero high schools around the globe like Australia, America, and Europe, for example, they had a similar festival like UA, and word was that they were going to make an international one with high schools around the globe. However, Hatsume's eyes gained a very dangerous glint. I can finally showcase my babies to the world. However, their sensei called out to the class. I have one request as my students. Not as a hero, but from your homeroom teacher. The small class listened carefully as their teacher talked. I want you to show them what you're made out of. I want you to get to the final round of the festival, and if you do, and if you can, claim first place. The students were oddly silent before Izuku smiled. Don't worry, Kiyama-sensei. I'll claim first place for sure. You sure you'll be fine though? Asked Joker as the purple-haired teen nodded. I'll be fine. Don't say that with a straight face when there's blood dripping from the sides of your mouth like a waterfall. Later in the day, Izuku, Joker, and Hatsume had meet up with Shinso during the noonday break and decided to check Class 1A at the blue-haired teen's request. I'm honestly looking forward to the sports festival, Izuku said. The look on the faces when the hero kids lose to students in the general education and support courses will be hilarious. Plus, that would speak a lot for the hero kids when they lose, Shinso said. How can you entrust the future to heroes if they lost to those who aren't heroes? Exactly, that will hurt the hero classes pretty badly, Yamakumo said. You two are enjoying this way too much, Joker said as Hatsume was too into her inventions. It's pointless to try, so why don't you just fuck off, you goddamn mob, said the loud Bakugu. Seemed they arrived at 1A. Don't go calling people you don't know a mob right off the bat, scolded Ida, the one Kurogiri let go on purpose. I came to see what you kids are made of, true, but I didn't think you'd be this arrogant, Shinso said as he slowly came to the front of the mob. Are all the kids enrolled at the Department of Heroics this way? I'm a bit disillusioned. So that's it, huh? Asked Shinso as he rubbed the back of his neck. There are lots of kids who wind up in the general education or management departments because they failed the Heroics 1. Did you know that? And based on the results of the sports festival, people can be even come under review to be transferred to Heroics. And the reverse is also a possible outcome. Scoping out the competition? If nothing else, a general education kid like me is thinking, hey, why don't I try pulling the rug out from under those Heroics kids while they're on their high horse? Consider it a declaration of war. However, as Shinso left, a kid from Class B arrived. Hey, you! I'm from Class B, he shouted. I heard you knocked around with villains or whatever, so I came to hear it direct. But I don't want to hear from some snot-nosed punk. Don't embarrass us during the main event, you hear me? However, the group of 4 had already left, couldn't hear the outcome. Izuku sat back at the bar. Tomorrow was going to be the day of the sports festival. Students had been injured with the exception of Mina, Todoroki, Hagakure, Ida, and Kuda. But now, he can do some personal damage. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating what-if scenario of Deku. The possibilities were truly mind-blowing. If you found this video entertaining and thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me and inspires me to bring you more captivating content in the future. Stay tuned for more exciting what-if stories and other amazing videos coming your way. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep embracing the power of imagination.